Welcome to the course Business Analytics and Text Mining Modeling using Python. So, in the first lecture we started our discussion on this topic. We talked about the previous two courses that I have done and some of the lectures that might be relevant for this course as well. So, we refer to that aspect. Then we compared how this particular course text mining course is in a sense extension of what we have done in our data mining courses. We talked about structured numeric data and other aspects of processing unstructured data, and we talked about machine learning algorithms and their relevance in processing unstructured data as well. So, all these things we discussed in the previous lectures. We compared text mining and data mining scenarios as well. We looked at points which are common, the common themes, and we looked at certain points which are different in text mining in comparison to data mining. We also discussed a bit about other domains like natural language processing, search engine technology, and how how closely they are related with text mining. So, those aspects were also discussed in the previous lecture. Data mining versus text mining. So, all these structured data, some points here also we had discussed, and then we moved to unstructured data for text mining. So, this part was also discussed in the previous lecture. We talked about how unstructured data is going to be represented in the text mining course, and how we are going to take an empirical view of textual data, how we transform the text data into a numerical presentation, just like we used in data mining techniques. So, these aspects we had discussed. This is one example that we have discussed, where we are indicating presence or absence of these words indicated in columns, 1 indicating presence, 0 indicating absence. So, this presentation also we had discussed in the previous lectures. Then we talked about many other aspects, and then we were discussing the text characteristics that are going to be really important here. So, we talked about collection of documents and the set of attributes which are going to be forming the total set of unique words in the collection. So, all these aspects we discussed. We talked about the dictionary that would be created in this process. So, let us move further. So, to continue our discussion on understanding text characteristics, now few points are mentioned here again, that for a large enough collection of documents, the tabular layout, the matrix layout that we have talked about, that is going to be too sparse, because on the column side we are going to have a number of words, and those words are not going to be present in each of the documents represented by rows. So, in any column, if we take any column, there are very few cells which are going to have ones, and many cells are going to whole lot of cells are going to have zeros. So, that can be, now zeros can be when the whole sheet we look at as a whole, the whole sheet would be filled with a majority of zeros. So, that is something that we refer as sparse. So, we will have to process this kind of data. So, in the overall sheet and the layout that will have, tabular layout that will have, there would be few ones which would be indicating the presence of those words along the column side in the respective rows, but there would be a big number of large number of zeros indicating the absence. So, we would be processing this data, and if there are more number of attributes, more number of words that are to be displayed along the column side, then this will be dealing with a large data set, and which is going to be too sparse. So, the same thing is mentioned here. Any individual document will use only a tiny subset of the potential set of words in a dictionary. So, techniques. So, how do we process a text that is expected to be sparse. So, one mechanism that many programs, many text mining based program that they employ is that they store only positive cell values in their actual implementation. So, any particular cell, if it is indicating the presence of the word, so that would be recorded in the actual implementation, and the other cells, they would be taken as their default value would be taken as 0. That means those words were absent for that particular document. So, tabular and the tabular or matrix spreadsheet layout is mainly being used for conceptual clarity, while our discussion in this course and the various examples that we are going to discuss, we are always talking about this tabular layout, but in the actual implementation of text mining programs, they are storing the whole data in a different manner, because that would be more optimized. It would reduce computational time in terms of processing the data. Another important point about text is that all the values in a text mining spreadsheets are positive. So, if we refer back to what we have done in our data mining courses, where we are going to dealing with the real life variables. So, variables like sales, number of employees, and many other variables, they will have real values. So, they will range, many of these variables might have negative values, positive values, and there would be a big range of values they would be taking. However, in the case of this layout that we have discussed for text mining, there it would be filled with ones and zeros, and you see mainly positive values are there. So, this characteristics can be taken advantage of, and we can simplify processing of text further. Now, next point is about missing values. So, missing values in a data set is a big problem in data mining. So, this aspect we have discussed in the previous courses, where we talked about how missing values can be identified and how they can be tackled as well. We talked about that in a particular column, if one cell is having missing value, we can replace it with the average value for that column. So, all those aspects we have talked about. However, missing value is a non issue in a text mining scenario, because what we are indicating is just the presence or absence of words. So, typically we will not be dealing with missing values at all. So, this is a non issue. So, this is another advantage in text mining. Now, here in the previous lecture and in this one also, we have talked about tabular presentation. This simple tabular presentation that we have talked about, there are various variations of this format that are available. So, that we will be discussing throughout this course, depending on the technique where it is going to be used. So, it would not just be later on, as we will see in coming lectures, that it would just not be the presence or absence of words in our tabular layout. It could even be the frequency of words. So, or any other variants that have been suggested by researchers. So, those aspects could also be there that we will be discussing. Then let us come to the kind of types of tasks that we would be dealing with in this course. So, predictive text analytics consists of primarily two types of tasks, prediction and classification. So, in prediction we would be predicting the value of something, and in classification we would be predicting the class of something. So, these are the two types of tasks that we will be dealing with, but another task of clustering might be required in certain scenarios. One example is given here also. Clustering, as we have discussed in data mining context, that it comes under the unsupervised learning methods. So, the same thing is here as well. So, when we are talking about text categorization, we got to know the categories where we are supposed to classify different documents. So, if those categories themselves are not known, then how do we implement classification models? So, for that we might be using this clustering task, which will help us in terms of identifying those clusters, identifying those labels. So, the same thing is mentioned here. Another task that could be that we would be dealing with is extraction of information. So, in certain scenarios we would like to extract certain information from a given document, and that information could be connected with a real life real valued variables, and we might be populating a database using this particular process, extraction process. We will be discussing these aspects in more detail in this lecture when we talk about different types of problems that we typically solve in text mining. So, let us start with that. So, text mining problems, now going to discuss different types of text mining problems that are typically solved in this area. So, first one is document classification, which is also sometimes referred as text categorization. So, in this, as the name is suggesting, the idea is the main idea is to classify documents into one of the given categories. So, the business problem in a generic sense is like folder and file management, but this could be either online or it could be for your own computing device, laptop, or even mobile. This is the main problem, folder file management. So, as we know that documents are typically organized into folders and they might also be organized one folder for each topic. So, that kind of organization, that is typically we are looking for whether we talk about the online or offline scenarios. So, what would be the analytics component out of this business problem? So, whenever a new document is presented, our analytics task is going to place this document in the appropriate folders. So, just like in the data mining modeling scenario we have talked about, we train a model on training partition, and any new observation we have to predict either the value or class of that. Similarly, here we would be building models based on the previous information, previous documents and their known categorization, and once the model is able to learn a few patterns from there, we would be required to classify a new document into their appropriate folder. So, this is the main problem. Now, this problem is further broken down into a binary classification problems, a set of binary classification problems, because a given document can belong to more than one folder, more than one categories. So, because we are dealing with text data, so when the content is text and we are trying to learn from the words that are there, now different combination of words will indicate the categorization of that document to a different folder. If there are two categories like finance and office, then if the more terms are related to finance folder, finance theme, then probably we will put that document in the finance folder. If more terms, more words are related to the office theme, then probably we will place that document in that folder. But it might so happen that there are words which are indicating that particular document can be placed in both the folders. So, therefore, we have to treat this problem as a binary classification problem that we will see through an example later on as well. So, this problem is also considered as a form of indexing. So, as you can see whatever experience that you might have about indexing, that even in your computer systems, when you are searching for something, so a number of results are displayed when you are searching for a file and folder, because files with similar names they might be present in different folders in your computer system. So, all those results are displayed. So, that is in a sense based on the indexing process that is implemented in operating systems. The similar kind of thing is what we are doing in this particular text mining problem, where we are assigning new document to their appropriate folders. Few examples for this kind of text mining problem are automatically forwarding email to the appropriate team, department. Typically in organization different teams deal with different kind of work. So when a new let's say a complaint from the client side comes, so which team is supposed to deal with that complaint. So whether based on certain model, whether we can train that model based on previous instances, and whether we can predict which team should be looking at that particular complaint. So that kind of classification can be really useful to improve efficiency in an organization. Similarly, detecting spam mail, future stock movements based on pre or post event news articles and financial data. So typically before any before any major event, many people write about what is working well for the certain stocks, what is not working well. So based on the information, based on the analysis presented and written by various experts in those news articles, can we predict future stock movement, and we can also club financial data documents as well. So this can also be done using this document classification problem. Now let us look at the example. So we talked about binary classifiers. Now in this example we are trying to display exactly how this is how this is done. So this is example for document classification or text categorization problems. You can see a new document is here. Now this document is to be classified into one of these categories: home, finance and office. And you can see we have created three binary classifiers here. One is home versus one is belonging to home, not belonging to home, that we are representing using tilde. Finance versus not belonging to finance, office versus not office. So you can see instead of having one general classifier for this document to be classified into one of these categories, 1, 2, 3 here again, we are building a 3 binary classifier where we are trying to find out whether given this document and the model, our trained model, based on that we will score this document and find out whether it will belong to home or not, find out whether it will belong to finance or not, we will find out whether it will belong to office or not, and appropriately that document is going to be classified. So this captures that idea that one document can belong to multiple categories. With this let us move to the next data mining problem that we are going to that we typically solve in this area, that is information retrieval. So what is the, as the name is suggesting, it is about matching a particular document with a set of other documents. So business problem is a document can be referred as document matcher. It could be online or in your device, in your computing devices. So we might have a large collection of documents, and the idea is to find relevant documents. This is something that we do using search boxes that we have in our own personal systems. So if we break down the analytics component from this problem, then our task analytics task is going to be to retrieve the relevant documents based on the best matches of input document with the collection of documents that we have. So that this matching document matching is performed and the relevant results are to be presented. So it will another way to express the same idea is that new document is going to be compared to all other rows, where all the rows are representing different documents, and then most similar rows and their associated documents are going to be the answers for this. So business problem is going to be document matcher, and based on the given input document we will be doing document similarity kind of thing. So if we look at this kind of problem, information retrieval problem, it is similar to a search engine function. For any popular search engine, whether it is Google or or Bing or any other, where typically we are typing our keywords whenever we are looking for certain information, and based on the few words that are presented there, those words are going to be matched with the information that is there on web, and best matches are typically presented as the responses. So, it is the same kind of thing we do in this kind of information retrieval task, where based on the input document we have, we match it with the collection of documents, and then relevant results are presented. So, again how this is done, as I said, we typically measure similarity, just like this is done in nearest neighbor methods. You can refer to our discussion on Canaan technique in our data mining course. There we are using similarity based measures to find out to solve our analytics problem, data mining related analytics problem. Similar kind of thing is here also. We are going to use we are going to measure similarity, and some of the nearest neighborhood methods are going to be really helpful in this kind of problem. So, let us move on. So, to explain this information retrieval type of problems, you can see we can use this example. So, it is about retrieving matched documents. So, you can see we have input document, let us say the name of this document is text mining, and we have this document matcher. So, it will take the input document here, and it will be matched with the document collection that we have here, and then matched documents, the relevant document best matches are going to be presented. So, this is the whole idea about these kind of problems. Now, let us move to the next problem. This is clustering and organizing documents. So, as we have said that sometimes we might not be familiar with the labels or categories for a given collection of documents. So, the document structure might be unknown for us. So, that becomes a business problem for us, unknown document structure. It could be online or device. So, the whole scenario is we have a collection of documents with unknown structure, and the idea is to find a set of folders such that each folder holds similar documents. So, in a sense the idea is to create appropriate categories, to create appropriate labels. So, this is something that we can do in clustering, which is an unsupervised learning method, just like we did in the data mining course that we have done. So, here also clustering can be useful. So, analytics component out of for this particular business problem can be expressed like this. So, our analytics task is to cluster the similar documents in the collection and assign labels to each clusters. So, just like we learn in our data mining courses that we are looking for distinct clusters, distinct group of points, and then we try to understand so then we try to first thing is try to identify those clusters based on certain criteria. It could be similarities, could be some other variable, and then characterize those clusters. So, that characterization is essentially labeling of the those clusters. So, that is something that is important here in this particular task, because that this once this labeling is done, then once labeled collection of documents can in future be used for document classification problem. So, one example is also given here. For example, learning about the categories and types of help desk complaints. So, any organization might have whether they are into whether they are selling product or whether they are into services. So, they will have their own help desk, they will be receiving complaints on a day to day basis, on a daily basis, and how different complaints are to be handled by different departments in the organization. So, it would be really helpful for them if they have a mechanism, if they have a model which can help them in terms of predicting whether this complaint is belongs to the work of team 1 or to the work of team 2 or team 3. So, whether it is suppose this is related to IT department, whether it is a networking problem, whether it is a disk problem, whether this is a memory problem, or or any other issue, whether it is a hardware failure or software failure or incompatible software versions. So, different groups might be, different teams might be dealing with different types of problem. So, whether we can learn about these categories so that later on it could be really useful if we could build the prediction models for the same. Another advantage that might happen, especially in the context of this example that we have given, it might lead to identification of complaints which have no existing solution. So, it might happen that the organization might have developed ready made solutions for different set of complaints. So, this kind of categorization in a sense will also help us, because a new complaint which cannot be easily labeled as any of the existing categories that we might have, and therefore, we will get a problem for which we might not have a solution. So, identification of complaints which are having no existing solution, so that scenario is also well covered by solving these problems. So, let us move to before moving to the category, let us explain the same thing through this graph. So, we have this document collection. Now, this is our document organizer here, and the idea is to organize the whole collection into these groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4 and group 5, and each of these groups are holding similar kind of documents. So, that is the idea. Now, once this kind of labeling is done, then later on the document classification problem that we have already discussed, that can be solved. So, let us move on. So, the next text mining problem is information extraction. So, we talked about little bit about this problem in this lecture also. So, the business problem is populating database from unstructured data. So, there are many business scenarios where the company might be having financial statements or other documents where they might have given details about their sales volume, industry codes, many other things that can identify that firm, or certain values, certain variables and their values related to that firm. So, can we extract those values from the documents? So, can we extract that information from the document and populate our variables in the database? So, that is the whole idea. So, we might have a given collection of documents, and it is about automatically filling the relevant values associated with certain defined variables in a database. So, in our database we might have revenues, industry code and etc., and the idea is whether we can extract the relevant values and populate the store those values in the relevant row along that column. So, the analytics component out of this business problem can be expressed like this. The analytics task is to extract data from an unstructured format based on words which can be higher level concepts or real valued variables. So, in the text document there would be a number of words there, it would be consisting of a number of words, and some of these words might be related to income, might be related to sales, revenues, various things. So, can we extract data from there based on these words which might actually be real life real valued variables. So, another associated aspect that we need to understand is that the variable that we are trying to measure here, they might not have a fixed position in the document, they might be anywhere. So, the value might also be anywhere and they might be described in different ways. So, that is the complexity that we might be dealing with in this problem. To give you an example, extracting the sales volume and industry codes from company documents. So, this could be one. Let us understand this using this figure. So, we have this input document and you can see a few lines text lines here. On revenues of 25 crore rupees, the company reported a profit of 45 lakhs for the fiscal year. So, you can see that and then we have this spreadsheet where we have these variable revenue and profit. So, this document might be along this row, might be associated with this row, and whether we can extract the revenue number and the profit number. So, you can see revenue number is written in words 25 crore rupees. So, different format, and the profit number is in numerics. So, whether we can extract this information and fill our spreadsheet. So, this task is about extracting this kind of in this fashion, extracting the information and filling our database. Now, few generic points about prediction and evaluation process that is performed in text mining. So, process text mining modeling process as such is similar to data mining modeling process that we have discussed in previous courses. So, the process is about building models based on prior cases. So, these prior cases are actually going to be forming our training partition. Then the model which is built on these prior cases using the training partition, then this is used to predict the unseen cases from test partition. Now, how do we evaluate the model success? So, based on the performance on test partition, which is of course not part of the model building process. So, we look at the performance, the numbers, and how well the model is doing. So, that is how the evaluation process is done. So, if we look at this overall mechanism, so this works for most of the text mining scenarios. However, there might be few special scenarios. So, that is something that also we will discuss. So, with this we would like to stop at this point, and we will continue our discussion on prediction and evaluation in the next lecture. Thank you.